Okay, so let's start with photoelectric effect. I want to know, what do you think when the term photoelectric effect comes to your mind? I want to know your thoughts on this. One by one, maybe.
સિમ્પલ શબ્દોમાં જો સમજણ આપીએ તો ફોટોનના કારણે ઇલેક્ટ્રોનનું એમિશન.
Okay, yes. Anybody else has some other thoughts or other ideas or not about what is photoelectric effect? I want to know just your thoughts on photoelectric effect. It can be anything. What do you remember when you listen to this term photoelectric effect? Yes, it is in one word, because of the photons, there are emission of electrons from the material. So we'll talk about that. I hope you know this, that because of if you have a metal piece of metal here, and because if when you incident some photons on this piece of metal, you get some electrons out. So that is what happens. Get some electrons out if you throw some photons onto the metal surface. So this is what photoelectric effect is. Yes, very good. So your thoughts on photoelectric effect? It can be any thought.
It is an effective way of studying a material or any
Yes.
metal.
Yes, it is a very good way to study a metal. Yes, because if you throw photons on it, you will get electrons. You can see at how much, what energy of photon the material is emitting electrons, and you can know the work function of the metals. And if you know the work function, you can use that work function studies in thermionic emissions and lot more things. Yes, so it is a very good way to study properties of metal. Yes. Who actually explained photoelectric effect?
Albert Einstein, right?
Yes, Albert Einstein, the guy with the hair. We all know him about for MC, E equal to mc square. But it is to somebody's surprise that he received Nobel Prize for the explanation of photoelectric effect. So it was explained by Albert Einstein, but it was observed by whom? If you know, it was observed in laboratory by some scientist.
P. Leonard, Philip Leonard.
Philip Leonard, yes. Philip Leonard, it was observed by Philip Leonard, and then Hertz also observed it in his laboratory.
Yeah.
So these two guys observed the photoelectric effect, and it was one of the black clouds that we could not explain the outcomes of the photoelectric effect experiment using our normal knowledge. So there is a wonderful story I want to tell you right now. Photoelectric effect, about photoelectric effect. We know the basics about the photoelectric effect. I just want to tell you a story. Maybe many of you know the story right now, but I just want to tell you the story, if you even if you know. There was a debate on whether the light is a wave or a particle. So light, there was a debate. Either it is a wave or it is a particle. So for a big thing like this mouse, it is a particle, as we can easily see it. And for the bigger waves, like the waves in a row, we can see that they are carrying some energy with themselves. So it is a wave. But what happens if the amplitude of wave is so small, or the size of the particle is so small? You can't distinguish. So for centuries, there was this question that whether light is a wave or a particle. Newton stood on this side. I'm not going into detail that how they did this. Newton stood on this side, but at the same time, Christian Huygens, or Huygens, if we say, Christian Huygens stood on this side, that light is a wave. Newton stood on this side, but due to Newton's popularity, everyone believed that light is a particle for almost about a century. But then came this young guy named Young, Thomas Young, and he explained through his double slit experiment that light indeed is a wave, because it was showing diffraction and interference, and only waves can show diffraction and interference. So Young was on this side. By Young's double slit experiment, he showed to the world that light is a wave, indeed a wave, because you can see some beautiful diffraction patterns using Young's double slit experiment. And while you are sitting at home, you should try making single slit at least using anything you can find. So at least you should, as a physics graduate, you should try and make a single slit at your home. You have all the things available at your home to make a single slit, and you can try seeing through that, showing some laser light which is available in market for about 30 rupees. So you can throw some laser light onto that slit and see the diffraction pattern. It is a wonderful diffraction pattern by single slit. So you can make the single slit, or you can even make the double slit easily. So what Young did was describe Young's double slit experiment and told the world that light is a wave. Okay, the matter was settled. But then came the question that light comes from sun to earth. There is no medium in between. Then how come a wave propagate in no medium? Wave is an propagation of energy through some medium. It is a disturbance in a medium in simple languages. So if it is a disturbance in a medium, then there is no medium between sun and earth. So how does light reach the earth? So this question was unsettling, and so everybody assumed that there is a medium called ether in between sun and earth. And then for about a century, people believed in ether. But then there came two guys named Michelson and Morley who wanted to prove the existence of ether, but they could not prove the existence of ether. So eventually it turned out that there is no ether. But just before Michelson and Morley's experiment, because Michelson and Morley's experiment was, they started the experiment and they carried out the experiment for almost 12 to 13 years. So in between or just before the Michelson-Morley experiment, there was a guy named Maxwell, and that Maxwell, the same Maxwell that you are studying, the 4 equations of motion, 4 equations of electrodynamics. Then the Maxwell combined all the known electricity and magnetism and just substituted a missing term just for the sake of the symmetry, that is displacement current. And I'm speaking these words by assuming that you know everything what I'm speaking. You know displacement current and everything. So he just inserted a term called displacement current just for the sake of symmetry, and he found out that light, after solving all those 4 equations simultaneously, found out that light is an electromagnetic wave. And you have done this mathematical exercise in your electrodynamics, I'm sure, in 5th semester or maybe in this semester. So you have done this solving of Maxwell equations exercise, eventually proving that light is an electromagnetic wave, so it does not need any medium to travel. And eventually at the same time, Michelson and Morley also proved that there is no ether in between. So using that concept, actually it pushed Einstein to think about something else. But currently we are focusing on light. So Maxwell told that light is an electromagnetic wave, and if we assume light is a wave, then there were a few phenomena which could not be explained. That one, the single phenomena which could not be explained assuming that light is a wave was photoelectric effect. So to explain that, the guy Einstein assumed that light is both corpuscles and waves. Corpuscles means particles. So Einstein assumed that light is a wave and particle together. So it is called a duality of light. And after explaining photoelectric effect using dual nature of light, Einstein could so this was the proof that light has a dual nature. So this was a proof, and it's much more elaborate proof. Experimental evidence came when Crompton did his experiment, which is known as Compton's effect, that to prove that light actually has a dual nature. Using Compton effect, he proved that light has a dual nature, and that was the matter settling point where the whole debate was settled after Crompton's experiment, that light indeed has a dual nature. But this photoelectric effect played a huge role in explaining that if we assume that light has a dual nature, we can assume we can understand more about the nature. So this was the first time. And if you don't know this story, the full story, I'll maybe send you an article or something where you can read this full story, or you can read it anywhere. I hope you know this wonderful story. Okay. So otherwise, I'll send you something where you can read this wonderful story. It is just a step-by-step wonderful way how science was established as we know today. And it is a wonderful way of learning science by studying different cases and how different people found some problems in the current understanding of science, their current understandings of science, and developed some new ideas. So it is a wonderful way. But photoelectric effect was indeed a pioneer of duality of light. Yes. So till then, that's why we are interested in study of photoelectric effect, but by using our statistical mechanics, not by using the quantum mechanics, but by using statistical mechanics. We are interested in studying the photoelectric effect. That is what our goal is. So what is photoelectric effect? Photoelectric effect is, as somebody of you told, that you have a piece of metal and you can throw a photon onto the metal. This photon has some energy, h nu, and you can extract electrons from the metal. Once the photon incidents on the metal, you can extract electrons from the metal. That is called photoelectric effect. Okay, so photon hitting the surface, emitting electrons from it is photoelectric effect, and it is different from thermionic emission. Why is it different from thermionic emission? Because in thermionic emission, you were heating the metal, heating the piece of metal, and because of that heat, that internal internal motion of electrons used to come out from the metal. But here you are using some external agency to give energies to the electrons in the metal. Electrons still have the kinetic energy due to temperature, but you are not using that temperature to take out the electrons. You are using this photons to take out the take out the electrons. So this is an external agency which is different from thermionic emissions, which we used earlier. So since this is a photoelectric effect, a little bit different from thermionic emission, so we will be studying this photoelectric effect. Yes. So let's learn some physics right now. Let's apply some physics that we already know right now to this matter, and we can know that as we all started in the previous class, we are going to use the right-handed coordinate system. This is y-axis, this is z-axis coming out from the board, and this is going to be x-axis. So this is a yz plane. So we want to find out that electrons coming out from that yz plane after a photon of energy h nu hits the electron. After the photon of energy h nu hits the electron, this is the photon of energy h nu, which hits the electron. If it wants to come out from the yz plane, it must have the component x, component of its energy due to obviously temperature, plus the energy supplied by photon has to be greater than or equal to the depth of the well where electron is sitting. So electron is sitting inside a well, depth of which is W. So electron is sitting somewhere here. So the kinetic energy of electron plus the energy supplied by the photon must be greater than or equal to W for electrons to come out from the YZ plane. And what we are interested in, as the case of thermionic emission, we are interested in finding the current density of the electrons. Why we are interested in finding the current density of the electrons? Because if we can take out electrons using this method, then maybe we can use this method of emission of electrons instead of thermionic emissions if needed at some places where we can't increase the temperature, but we have the source of light to take out the electrons. If in some applications, if needed, we can't increase the temperature, then we can use the external agency of photons to take out the electrons if we need electron gun in those circumstances. So this is the basic application we have in mind. So we want to find out the current density and its dependence on this photon energy, and maybe the external temperature and everything we'll figure out soon. But our main purpose is to figure out at which photon energy how many electrons will come out. This is our main motive of doing this. So how many electrons will come out? We eventually want to know the current density. But since these electrons come out from the YZ plane must have this much energy, so you can easily say that Px must be greater than or equal to under root 2m W minus h nu. So this is going to be different from the previous case. Then in thermionic emission, I just want to know how many of you remember at least a few lines from the thermionic emission. Just raise your hand, so I'll listen to tick 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 tick, and then yes. So one or two guys at least remember a little bit. Okay, two. Only two students know a little bit about thermionic emission. Okay, so yes. Okay, no problem. So Px is greater than or equal to under root 2m W minus h nu. This is going to be the energy. If we want to extract the electron, this has to be its minimum energy. This has to be its minimum energy. If its energy is greater than this, then electrons will come out. This is the minimum momentum, x component of momentum. This is minimum x component of momentum that the electron must have to come out of that surface. Yes. Okay. So till now, if you have any doubts, just kindly ask me. Actually, let me write next step also, then I'll take all your doubts. So I'm using the same treatment as we used last time, but this time, if a photon hits the metal surface, I'm assuming that not all the photons are absorbed by the metal surface. Some of them are reflected. So I'm assuming that there is something called probability of absorption of photon, and I'm defining it as A. So out of 100 photons, only A number of photons are being absorbed. 100 A number of photons are being absorbed. Out of 100 photons, 100 times A number of photons are being absorbed, all other photons are being reflected. So this is what is different from the thermionic emission. So there are two things which is different from thermionic emission. There is an external agency which provides additional kinetic energy. This is kinetic energy due to temperature, and this is additional kinetic energy. This is provided by temperature, or this is provided by external photon. And for a photon, we are talking about probability of absorption, that not all the photons will be absorbed. There will be some photons which will be absorbed, and so we want to find out the flux of electron coming out. Of the YZ plane. What do I mean by flux? Flux means number of electrons per unit time per unit area. This is what I want to find out. Flux of electrons coming out from the YZ plane. It is given by n, and from our previous statistics, we know that it is 2a upon m h cube integration minus infinity to plus infinity dpy integration minus infinity to plus infinity dpz integration under root 2m w minus h nu to infinity px dpx over under root exponential of beta, I should write it, yes, like this, px square by plus py square plus pz square by 2m minus epsilon f plus 1. Yes. So this is what is total number of photons, or total number of electrons coming out from the YZ plane. Now, if you have any doubts regarding this equation or earlier, kindly ask right now. If you don't understand it, just tell me that I didn't understood it, how you wrote it. So I'll go back to thermionic emission, because this is important. To understand this is most important. I'll go back to thermionic emission. It is not a problem. Yes.
In the case of thermionic emission, there was nothing like cross section. It was just a heating of metal, and it would come out. But here, if we are talking about interaction, doesn't we have to include cross section stuff and all that? Because in absorption case also, we need some like if photon is colliding or not colliding.
So yes, this is what takes care of that fact that either photon is being absorbed or not absorbed. Once photon collides with the metal surface, some of the photons energies are being absorbed, some of the photons are reflected back from the metal. So this A is what takes care of that phenomena, that some of them are so out of 100 photons, how many photons energies are being absorbed and are helpful for the electrons to come out. So this A takes care of that. And for scattering cross section, actually we need that scattering. If we want to talk about scattering, I'm not actually finding a picture in my mind that how are you talking about scattering. Just kindly explain about the idea of scattering.
I was talking like, suppose there is a photon and it has to be first absorbed.
Yes, definitely.
And it need not have to absorb like whole energy or something, some energy.
No.
If it is absorbed about some energy, then it will be scattered with some remaining energy.
No, it won't happen. If a photon is colliding, so again, this is an what we are assuming is elastic collisions. So all the photons which are colliding, if they have enough energy, they'll be absorbed. Otherwise, they'll go back with their own energy. There is nothing called half a photon's energy is being transferred.
So then, what is the meaning of reflection of photons? Like some will be reflected and some will be absorbed.
So the meaning of reflection is like this: that if they do not have enough energy to excite that electron, if some of meaning of reflection here is not this classical reflection. I'm just telling that some of the photons are being absorbed. Yes, it is a very good question. I need to think about it. Okay, I don't want to give you any false answer right now. So I need to think about it. Kindly give me 1 day's time. I'll be thinking about it.
No problem,
I'll
sir.
get
Okay,
back to
sir.
you.
Thank you
Yes,
so
I'll
much.
get back to
No,
you. Yes.
no problem.
So what my idea is, just I want to know that you get the my idea. I'll
Yes,
get back to you.
I got about n, the flux
Yes.
of electrons, because it is directly dependent on a. The amount of
Yes.
absorption is directly will decide what the flux of electrons would be. I
Yes.
got
But
that answer. But
yes. But how the electrons are getting reflected, I'll get back to you tomorrow.
okay.
Okay. So yes. But if anybody,
If anyone want to try this, they can answer from
yes,
this.
hi, if
From
anyone
here.
of you can try answering this question, yes, it will be helpful. What do we mean by collision? If any one of you wants to, or if any one of you has doubt regarding this, they can ask right now. That how I wrote this, because not all the photons are being absorbed. Some of them will be reflected. Uh, so I have to see that what do we mean by photon being absorbed. Okay, we'll see that. Yes, but if anybody of you has doubts regarding this equation, kindly tell me, because this is the same equation that I wrote in thermionic emission. Just this A is new and this lower limit is different this time. But otherwise the whole equation is same. Now the whole point is, if you don't have any doubt, I'm just waiting for 5 seconds more if you have any doubts. Okay. If you don't have any doubt, the whole matter now depends on this n, because if you want to find the current density, it is nothing but E times n. And we want to find n, and to find n, we need to solve this integrations. In the case of thermionic emission, W was really large, so we had a few tricks that we could ignore this one and get to the result. But here, because it is W minus H nu, we can't comment about anything, and we have to do this integration as a whole. So for next 20 minutes, it is going to be really wonderful mathematics. If you find mathematics boring, then it will be boring, but I'll be trying to explain that what we are doing. So for next 20 minutes, I think we are going to have this mathematics, and after 20 minutes the result will come out and we'll be seeing the physics aspects of it. So this is what integration we need to solve. This is the integration we need to solve. So let's start by solving this integration. So to solve this integration, let's change some variables. I'm just defining this PYPZ plane. What is this PYPZ plane means? It means it is a plane from momentum space, and on each and every point depicts that this much momentum in YZ component the particle has. So what we want to do is, we want to change this dpy and dpz together with some other variable. So what we'll do is, we can define this as p prime. So what is our p prime? P prime square is py square plus pz square. It is the resultant of py and pz component. That is our p prime momentum. And if we are changing a little bit momentum in y direction and a little bit momentum in z direction, it means overall what we are doing is, we are moving from this circle to the next circle. So we are changing p prime by a small amount dp prime. It is equivalent, both of them are equivalent, and that's how dpy into dpz can be changed into this 2 pi p prime into dp prime. Does anybody of you has a problem with this? Because how did I wrote this? It is a small length of 2 pi p prime and a small increment, it is dp prime. So this is the total area of this shaded region. I want to shade it with some other color. So let's use some other color. The shaded region, if you can see, I want to find, this is the area of the shaded region. It shows the small increment in dpy and dpz at the same time. So this is that shaded area, and its area can be given by 2p prime dp prime. If you have any doubts regarding this, kindly ask. And the limits right now, earlier the limits of py and pz were from negative infinity to positive infinity, but kindly can anybody tell me that what should be the limits of p prime? Okay, either you guys are not understanding anything, or You need to bring doubts to me if you are not understanding it. What should be the limits of p prime if py and pz are ranging from minus infinity to plus infinity?
0 to infinity.
Yes, it should be 0 to infinity because p prime has 0 value here if both of py and pz are 0, and if both of them can have any value py and pz, but eventually their squares addition will have values between 0 to infinity. So p prime has the value between 0 to infinity, and this multiplication we can change using this. So let's change the variables in this integration. The first term will remain like this. We want to change these two integrations, so we are just changing variables. Yes, so yes, I want to change the variable here. So it is n equal to 2a upon mh cube under root 2m w minus h nu to infinity px dpx, and integrating 0 to infinity 2 pi p prime dp prime over e raised to px square by 2m, this p has to be small p, plus p prime square by 2m minus Fermi energy plus 1. Do we all get that? I just replaced py square by pz plus pz square in this by p prime square, and changed this limit of dpy into dpz by 2 pi p prime dp prime. And if you want to solve this integration, it is going to be a little bit awesome. So if you want to solve this integration, I'll be just directly solving this integration as it is being done in your book, and then we'll talk about this. How can we get to this part? So n here is this 2 pi can come out, so it is 4 pi a over beta h cube, where a px can range from under root 2m omega minus h nu to infinity px dpx, and that integral has been changed to this 1 plus e raised to e raised to beta ef. Oh, I want to write it somewhere else. There is something multiplied with this. I'll get back to it, that how is it done. Just multiply this with this. ln 1 plus e raised to beta epsilon f minus px square by 2. This is multiplied with this. So overall integral, this is the solved part of the previous integral. This term was solved as this term, and there is some constant beta came here and m disappeared, and so many things happened from here to there. So I want to get back to it. So I just solved this integral, which looks rather scary, but I just solved this integral, and I want to tell you how I did that. So let us just keep this integral. Let's just write this integral, rewrite this integral. P prime dp prime, p prime dp prime over 2 pi. I just is just absorbed by this number, and it has become 4 pi. And this denominator I'm writing e raised to beta times px square by 2m plus p prime square by 2m minus epsilon f plus 1. This is the integral from 0 to infinity. If I want to solve this integral, what I will do is I'll just multiply this integral with minus beta by 2m. I'll just multiply this integral with minus. You won't find any of this in your book, right? So try to be with me, because I had a quite hard time in this last 2 days. Actually, I was supposed to teach this topic on the day when I took your tutorials, but I had a really difficult time solving these integrals. So I had put a lot of hard work to just make sure that you understand each and every step from the book. So kindly be present. If you don't understand anything, try to bring the doubts to me. Okay, so I just want to multiply this number by minus beta by 2m, and eventually what I'll do is eventually I'll multiply this number which was there by this number by minus 2m upon beta. So eventually the whole number remains the same. I am multiplying this by minus beta by 2m, this integration, and I am solving this. And I'll multiply this number by minus 2m by beta. So mm will get cancelled out and beta will come here, and this 2 will go somewhere. We'll talk about that too. But I am multiplying this number by minus beta by 2m. This 2 pi comes out. So what this becomes is minus of 2 to the 4 to the 8 pi a over beta h cube. This constant becomes like this. Then this number, how it becomes like px dpx from the proper limits, this 2m w minus h nu. So it will be a little bit boring mathematics, and I'm just absorbing this minus beta by 2m here, and p prime dp prime over this exponential of beta px square by 2m plus p prime square by 2m minus epsilon f plus 1. So yes, this is how is it going to be. I am solving this integral right now from 0 to infinity. I'm solving this integral and I'm telling this guy as I, renaming this guy as I. If I want to solve this integral, I'm just renaming this guy as I. This is I, and I'm solving this I. If this is equal to I, then what I can do is I want to find a function whose derivative looks like this. If I can find a function whose derivative looks like this, then that function is the solution. That's how we do the integration. So I want to find a function whose derivative looks like this, and eventually when I tried a little bit hard, I could find a function whose derivative looks like this. It is ln 1 plus e raised to beta epsilon f minus px square by 2m minus p prime square by 2m. So it is minus, if we take minus out from these, then it does looks like this. So this is beta, this bracket is over. Okay, I need to write this properly. Beta epsilon f minus px square plus p prime square by 2m. Just close this bracket, and close the outer bracket. Okay, so I found out a function. If we take the function's derivative with respect to p prime, so this is the function I found, and if we take, this is a new part, if we take this function's derivative with respect to p prime, then what we eventually get is 1 upon this 1 plus e raised to something, this whole something power, and this e raised to something will come out, and in multiplication what we will have is the derivative of this, which is going to be minus beta by 2m 2p prime square 2p prime square into 2p prime into dp prime. Sorry, this is what we are going to have, because if we take partial derivative with respect to p prime, then these quantities are going to be treated as constants, and eventually we are going to have this. And if we divide with this number in both the sides, then here we have 1 upon e raised to minus of this plus 1, because we divide by this same e into something, we divide at both the times. So e raised to minus something plus 1 into it is minus beta by 2m into 2p prime dp prime. So it is going to be 2p prime dp prime. Okay, so this is going to be the differentiation of this function, and it is nothing but the same function here. We just need to multiply it with 2, so we can take this 2 out from here and we can make this 4. So we are keeping this 2 with this p prime, we are just taking pi out, we are taking this pi out, we are keeping this 2 with the p prime only. So what we are doing is keeping this 2 with p prime, and we are just taking pi out. So 2 to the 4. So eventually it turns out to be 4 pi a. So this 2p prime dp prime minus beta by 2m, and this number, its integration has to turn out to this number. It has to turn out to this function. Sorry, it is not a number. So it has to turn out to this function ln. So its integration I has to turn out after this. If we took derivative of this function, if we receive the same function, then its integration I has to turn out to be this, has to be this e raised to beta EF minus Px square plus P prime square by 2m. And yes, and if we take the limits, which is from 0 to infinity, if we take the limits of this guy, if we take the limits for this guy, let us take limits ln 1 plus exponential of beta epsilon f minus px square plus p prime square. I'm sorry for this boring mathematics, but it is how the physics, we'll see physics in just 5 more minutes. So this is the integration. क्या आया ना? You assume it. Okay, we can put the bracket here. This bracket is over here. This bracket is over here. We need one more bracket. So total 4 brackets. Yes. So if we put the limit from 0 to infinity in this, if we put infinity here on the place of p prime will go to infinity. So it will eventually be e raised to minus infinity. So it is going to be ln 1 minus if we put 0 on the place of p prime, it is going to be ln 1 plus exponential of this beta ef minus px square by 2m. It is going to be this second bracket, and we want to finish the third bracket and this fourth bracket. So it is ln 1 minus this, which means minus of ln 1 plus exponential. This is going to be the integral, our integral. I am solving this integral. So I is going to be minus of ln 1 plus exponential of beta ef minus px square by 2m. And this is how the integral is being solved. And in your book, this thing is written directly. There is this minus sign which multiplies with this minus sign, so it becomes plus. So the front number is 4 pi a by beta h cube. This integral remains as it is, and its solution is nothing but this ln something. So 4 pi a by beta h cube, its minus multiplies with the minus which we had previously in the previous section, and eventually we get this integral. So this is how we solve this integral. Oh, I'm sorry. So this is how we solve this integral, and we are solving this integral. How's that? We have learned that how is that. This is a really big process, and after that we got something. What did we got? We got this expression of n. So let's number this as number 1, equation number 1. So this is equation number 1, but generally what we do is we change this value of momentum also in terms of energies. So we first change the variables from py and pz. It is going to be really cumbersome mathematics, believe me, for next 10 minutes. From py to pz, we changed it into p prime. Now what we are going to do is from px, we are going to change epsilon x in the functions of energy. So what we are going to do is let's change some more variables and convert it in terms of energy. So we have this px square by 2m as epsilon x. So what we can do is 2px dpx divided by 2m equal to dex. And eventually this will give us px into dpx equals to m times d epsilon x. This is going to be the first thing before changing the variable. And the second thing is we need to change the limits if we change all the variables to epsilon x, because it becomes easier to look at this equation if we change it in terms of epsilon x. You will soon know that why I'm changing this, because this equation in itself looks rather scary. But if we change this px square by 2m as epsilon x, it will look it will appear to be a really beautiful equation. We are just changing this, and we need to change the limits. So if px equal to under root 2m w minus h nu, which implies epsilon x will be w minus h nu. And if px is infinity, which means epsilon x is also infinity. So we just change px into dpx into some other quantities, and we just change epsilon x also. If you want, you can take this all for granted and look into the derivation in your book. I won't mind it all, but I just try to do it stepwise. So this is how we are going to change, and that's how we are going to keep n, which is going to be 4 pi a, which was already there. M comes from the dex, m comes from here upon beta h cube. Beta h cube will be there, and the limits will change from w minus h nu to infinity, and this is going to be ln 1 plus exponential of beta epsilon f minus epsilon x sorry, d epsilon x. This looks rather nice. So this, let's number this equation as equation number 2. This equation looks rather nice, but we are still not satisfied. We will still change some variables to make sure that this lower limit turns out to be 0 and the upper limit turns out to be keeps on itself as infinity. So we'll further change the variable. Let's change the variable one more time. We'll do change the variables such as y will keep y as beta times epsilon x. The reasons are just to simplify the mathematics. The reasons are nothing else, just to simplify the mathematics. If we take this as y, then it is clear that dy is equal to beta times d epsilon x. Therefore, if we want to substitute in place of d epsilon x, we will substitute 1 upon beta dy. Okay, we will substitute 1 upon beta dy, and if we want to change the limits, then if epsilon x is w minus h nu for lower limit, implies y will be how much? Oh, you guys are sleeping, I know. If epsilon x is w minus h nu for the lower limit, this equation had the lower limit. I'm trying to change the limits.
0.
Yes, it has to be 0, and this has to be infinity. If epsilon x tends to infinity, then y also tends to infinity. It's not equal to infinity. It tends to infinity. Okay. So if epsilon x tends to infinity, y also tends to infinity, and then we can simplify this whole n one more time. So this n appears to be, I'm sorry, n appears to be like this. N appears to be 4 pi am over h cube. Earlier it was beta, now it is beta square because dex equal to 1 by beta dy. It is now beta square, and it is 0 to infinity. It is 0 to infinity ln 1 plus e raised to beta epsilon f minus y by beta minus w plus h nu. I'm watching this as I don't remember the previous equation. If we had a whole board, we can easily see it from there. So from equation number 2, we are writing this epsilon x minus y by beta minus w plus h nu into dy. So this is how it eventually turns out, and we'll further simplify this using something else. So final expression for flux is going to be 4 pi am over h cube beta square. It is going to be 0 to infinity ln 1 plus e raised to beta h nu minus phi minus y. So this is going to be our integration for flux. This is the final expression for flux. We are not even trying to solve this integration. Okay, we will solve it using some approximations, but you can solve this equation numerically. If you can solve this equation numerically in some codings maybe, but here in classroom we are not going to solve it numerically. We are going to take a few approximation and see how this n behaves. So this is the final expression for flux. We are naming this as equation number 3, where phi is obviously phi is w minus epsilon f. So we have h nu minus phi, which means h nu minus w minus epsilon f. So it is h nu minus phi, where phi is work function, which is w minus epsilon f. So you have this good looking equation from limits, where limits are also good looking and the variables are also good looking. You have this equation in your hand. So this is the final expression for flux. Till now, if you have any problem in mathematics, just ask me. We'll talk about physics of this part. Okay, we'll definitely talk about physics in just 10 more minutes. I just want to know if you have any questions in this physics. Sorry, mathematics. Okay, so let's
પાછળ
move.
એક મિનિટ જાઓ ને.
हाँ,
તો બીટા બહાર નહીં આવે. અચ્છા
ચલો.
મલ્ટીપ્લાય કરી દીધું. કઈ વાત.
हाँ, multiply કરી દો તો પછી beta into epsilon f.
હમ.
So it will turn out. I hope you know, right?
Yes.
So beta into epsilon f minus y minus beta w plus beta into h nu. So it will eventually turn out to be power. I'm talking about power of e to the power. So it is, yes, I know. You know this. So it is beta h nu minus phi minus y. So it is going to be this. Okay. So yes. And finally, current density. It is really simple form, n into e. And n into e, we are going to use this expression 4 pi a. This a is absorption probability, m into e upon beta square h cube integration 0 to infinity ln of 1 plus e raised to delta minus y. We are further changing one variable one more time into dy. We are further changing this variable for one more time, and this is the final expression for current density, where we changed the variable something, we made something equal to delta. This is equation number 4, which is final expression for current density. And until we solve this integral, we don't get anything about this. So if some of you is better in coding, should try solving this integral using some numerical techniques and try to find out what eventually comes out, how j depends on y, and y eventually depends on epsilon x, and epsilon x eventually depends on px. So how j eventually depends on h nu and everything. So here I took this delta as beta times h nu minus phi. So this beta times h nu minus phi I took as delta, and I wrote this equation. Now we are going to try to solve this integration just one more time. This is the last piece of mathematics we are going to listen today. So we are going to try and solve this equation and look at turn it into more familiar equations to physicists. So we are going to do integration by parts. You will take this as u and v as 1. You will take v as 1, and you are going to take this whole term as u and this as v. So we are going to do integration by parts, and to do integration by parts, I hope you know how should we do this. So eventually j turns out to be 4 pi a me over beta square h cube, and u is kept as it is. So ln of 1 plus e raised to delta minus y is kept as it is, into you have y because of integration of v. Integration of v is y, and you put the limits on this from 0 to infinity, minus integration of u's derivation. So it is 1 plus e raised to delta minus y into e raised to delta minus y into its differentiation again. So it is minus 1 e raised to this differentiation of delta minus y, which is going to be minus 1, and again you integrate it. So you put phi here and you have dy on the same limits. So this is how the integration is going to look like, and you can easily see that you can put the minus sign with this. So this is going to turn out to be 4 pi a m e over beta square h cube, and this integration from 0 to infinity y over e raised to y minus delta plus 1 dy. So I hope everybody knows that this infinity, if we put in place of y, so this is going to be e raised to minus infinity, and it means 0. So this is going to be ln 1. So this whole term will be 0. And if you put 0 in place of this y, so it is eventually going to be 0. So this term on these two limits are going to be 0 minus 0. So it is eventually 0. And this minus sign will, the minus 1 will come, and it will make it plus. So this is your equation. And out of this, this guy, this integration itself is known as Fermi function or Fermi integral. Fermi integral f2 of e raised to delta. This individual is known as f2 of e raised to delta. If let's talk about Fermi integrals a little bit. I'm not going to talk about it. Fn of e raised to delta is defined as 0 to infinity x raised to n minus 1 dx over e raised to delta minus x plus 1. This is how we define Fermi integral. We are not even trying to solve these integrals. We are not even going to try to solve these integrals. These are for your master's course. If you are very well equipped in mathematics, then you can even try to solve these integrals. But I'll suggest you a wonderful reference where something about this integrals is given. It is in the book by Patheria. You have listened to this book. It is a book called Statistical Mechanics by Patheria. And in this book, you go to Appendix E. There you find some Fermi functions. In Appendix E, there you find there you are going to find some Fermi functions where you will eventually find out this what does this Fermi function mean and everything. We are not even going to try to do that. So this is where I stop. This is the Fermi integral of order 2. As you can see, for order n, it is x raised to n minus 1. So here we are having y raised to 2 minus 1. So it is Fermi function of order 2, f2 of e raised to delta. So this is Fermi integral. And since it is a Fermi integral, it's time for some physics. But before that, I want to just write expression for current density in terms of Fermi function. So it is 4 pi a m e over h cube beta square, and it is f2 of e raised to delta. Final expression for current density. And since we do not know anything about Fermi function, we can't take out the physics from this. So what we'll do is we'll take a few cases and try to discover physics in those particular cases only. I'm not going to talk about the continuous variation of J with some parameters. I'm just talking about those. I'm going to talk about those few simple cases and let's talk about physics. So till now it was boring mathematics. Now it has ended. If you have any doubts, you can ask. And about Fermi functions, I just want to tell you a few things in advance. So let's complete this boring mathematics at once. So I'm going to tell you that if e raised to delta is really, really larger, if it is really, really greater than 1 for Fermi function, then which implies this Fermi function f2 of e raised to delta turns out to be delta square by 2. And if e raised to delta turns out to be very, very smaller than 1, then this f2 of e raised to delta turns out to be approximately equal to e raised to delta. And if e raised to delta itself is equal to 1, then f2 of e raised to delta turns out to be pi square by 12. So these are three values. You have to know them by heart, or you can do whatever you want with these values. These are the three values. I'm not going to derive these values. Okay, you can learn about these values from that mathematical reference I gave it to you. Till now it was highly mathematical. So if you know these three things, like I know that you don't know, because I also don't know them really accurately. That's why I'm just writing these values. Till now I knew, but these values, how they come, I actually tried to find it out for 3-4 days, and I couldn't got any hold of how they are coming to these values. So I'll leave it to you guys. You try to find it out. But if you just believe me on these three things, or believe your book on these three things, it is wonderful. It is going to be a wonderful journey for physics. So till now it was boringest mathematics ever possible in this course. And if you have any questions in this boring mathematics part, you can ask me. Otherwise, it is the time to move for some physics. Any questions till now? I hope the mathematics till this part was clear. Mathematics till this part was clear. These things, it is okay. But mathematics till this part was clear, I hope. It should be clear because, yes?
Sir, can you go back to, I don't know, third slide maybe?
Yes, I'm going slowly. Just tell me when to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, still. Yeah, so, no, wait. Yeah. So here I have a question about the limits. Like we are taking limits of px from under this square root of 2m w minus h mu, right?
Yes.
So what happens when h mu is greater than w?
Okay, yes, we are going to talk about that in the physics part.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Now I can tell you that what happens when h nu is greater than w. Maybe I have done some mistakes or not. No, I have not done any mistake. So if h nu is greater than w, then yes. Okay, this turns out to be complex. So momentum. Just let me see. I did some error or not. H nu minus w, px square has to be greater than w minus h nu. When this turns out to be greater than w, we need to see some numbers.
I think no, we can go from a different approach. Like while forming this inequality, it was like that the h nu doesn't have much of the enough amount of energy in order to just kick out
Take
the
out.
electron,
Yes.
which has a zero kinetic energy.
Yes,
so it
yes, yes.
has to have some kind of some kinetic
Huh.
energy previously, so that
Yes.
it will add h nu and then it will be greater w. But if h nu is greater w, then we can take limit of px from 0, because even if this zero kinetic energy, the electron can also be
They can.
kicked out. So no need to go
Yes.
for like
Thank you
complex.
for-
We just have to.
Yes. Thank you for pointing this out, Jahan. I hope you got your answer, Bhavya.
I guess, but I still have to think.
So I just let me rephrase it in some other way. Thank you, John, for helping me out here. So how we started that electron. If we throw some light onto the electron, if we can extract the electron from the metal, then we can take any momentum in x direction. It can have any energy in x direction. If the photon has enough energy, it will take out the electron from the surface. Are you with me?
Yes.
So if in that case we don't even need the kinetic energy of electron. We don't even need the x component of kinetic energy of electron to be greater than something. It can be anything. Still, you can take out the electron. It can be anything. So in that case, if h nu is already greater than w, in that case you can take the limit of px from 0 to infinity. It can have any values.
Got it, sir. Thank
So
you.
it can be
Thank
from
you,
0
Jahan.
to
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, John. Okay. So yes, it is a wonderful question. I never thought about this. Thank you for asking that question. Yes. So after all this mathematics, now anybody of you has this kind of questions? Actually, I'm liking your questions. Everybody are asking wonderful questions. Everybody of you, and each and every questions are wonderful. So even if you have any question, they are going to be wonderful. Believe me. Ask me, or we can move on to some physics. You have 5 seconds. Okay, so it's time to move for some physics. So the first part is, this is approximation 1. We can't, the point is that we can't study this Fermi function. We don't know anything about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 approximations and try to study Fermi function and then see whether it is logically correct or not. So for that I'll be needing your help. So suppose if this is approximation 1, if h nu minus phi is really greater than kT, then what do you expect? By kT, I mean the kinetic energy of the electron gas. And if h nu minus phi, what is phi? So let me draw the well. This is well, its total depth is W. Suppose this is the Fermi level, and this is work function. So if h nu minus W is very larger than kT, means that h nu is very larger than phi. It means something like this, that the energy that photon has, it is going to be really larger than a work function. That means energy electron needs to come out from the metal. So if h nu is very greater than phi, or h nu minus phi is very greater than W, then what do you expect? Should the current density depend on the temperature, or should the current density depend on the momentum in the x direction, or kinetic energy in the x direction? The same question that you asked, Bhavya, it is about that only. That if we supply enough energy onto the photon, what do we expect? the current density of electrons coming out from the surface should not depend on the temperature of the material. So here there are two things happening because of the room temperature or whatever temperature the metal is kept in. I just want to make it clear, because the metal is kept at some temperature. So it is capable of emitting the electrons using thermionic emission. And as Michel yesterday beautifully showed us that even at very low temperature, there can be a tiny bit of number of electrons that can come out, even at a very low temperature. There exists a very small number of electrons that can come out. It may be negligibly small, but they can come out. So at any temperature T, let us suppose it is a room temperature, at any temperature T, electrons can come out using thermionic emission. Okay, so what I want to know is, if we are throwing some photons onto the surface, then I want to know that how many of electrons coming out from the surface are comprising due to photoelectric effect or thermionic emission. So electrons coming out from the surface are due to thermionic emission or photoelectric effect. That is what I need to know. That's why I'm focusing my all knowledge or all current accumulated knowledge on this current density. And I want to know what will happen if we throw the photon, which is enough energy, very greater than the work function. So what is our assumption before doing any calculation? What should be our assumption? That the current density coming, that means the number of electrons coming out from the surface, should depend on the temperature or not. What is your take on this? Should depend on this photon's energy or should depend on this temperature? That's what I want to know. The major part of it.
I think in case if we are considered looking for here a photoelectric effect only, then there will be not any like significant contribution of how much greater energy is there ahead of work function, because it depends on how much number of frequency of photons hitting on the surfaces are, if we are calculating the densities or current density that we are getting of due to electrons. But if we consider about thermionic emissions, like the number of photons having, if high energy of photons we are incidenting on metal, then obviously it will increase the temperature of the metal based on the how much absorption it happens. So I think if absorption is good, then the thermionic emission will also start contributing, and then we can have some analysis and comparison based on what amount of increase in emissions we are getting.
Yes.
If we calculate first photoelectric effect, and then we just want to do some experiment to see the contribution due to thermionic emission.
Thermionic emission. So yes. So the whole thing that you pointed out, we want to try and feel those things using just equations, not in the laboratory. So what our purpose is, let me again rephrase. I want everybody's contribution. Only 3-4 people are contributing. So what our purpose is, to a piece of metal, it is at some temperature, so there is some thermionic emission going on, and we are also bombarding the metal with some photons, so there is some photoelectric emission also going on. So if the energy of photon is really higher than the work function, or in other words, if energy of photon minus work function is really higher than the thermal energy of electrons, I want to know which one of these two dominates. I want to know this. I hope you got my perspective, that where I want to go. I want to know which one of these two will dominate out of photoelectric emission or thermionic emission. Which one of these two will dominate if we have enough energies photons are emitted.
I think it is thermionic emission which will dominate.
In this case I'm asking. So if energy of photon is enough larger than the temperatures, so it is the same question as Bhavya's, that energy of electron is
It will be photoelectric effect, because
yes.
work function, it is already greater than one work function.
Yes. So that's what that is what our assumption is. We will put those values in the mathematics, but this is what our physical assumptions. This is how we should think about the problems. Before starting, we should assume something about the problem. So this is our assumption. This is our starting point. So it gives us something that before starting the calculation, we came to know that in this case, photoelectric effect should dominate. Is everybody with me? I want to know if anybody has any doubts. We know it is our assumption that photoelectric effect should dominate. That means that J should not be dependent on temperature. The current density should not be dependent on temperature, only photoelectric effect. It should be dependent only on photoelectric effect parameters. That means the frequency of photons and everything. So that is our assumption. Is everybody with me, or does somebody has doubts? This is the physics part of it. So come out of your sleep. Okay, for next 10 minutes, I want everybody's attention. In next 10 minutes, we are going to close this lecture. So I want everybody's attention because this theory is going to be really insightful. Okay, so I'll be continuing as I was. Yes. So in this is our assumption. And since h nu minus pi is very, very greater than kT, what was beta? Sorry, delta. Delta was beta times h nu minus pi. So delta is also, if delta, what is delta? Delta is beta times h nu minus pi. And since h nu minus pi is very, very greater than kT, delta is going to be very, very greater than 1. And because you can divide it by kT, and it is going to be beta times h nu minus phi, and delta is very, very greater than 1. So e raised to delta is going to be very, very greater than 1. And since e raised to delta is very, very greater than 1, f2 of e raised to delta is going to be equal to, nearly equal to delta square by 2. And that's how J should be 4 pi a m e over h cube beta square. 4 pi a m e over h cube beta square into delta square by 2, and delta square is beta square h nu minus phi whole square, and beta square will get cancelled out with beta square. That's how we are going to get value of J is equal to 2 pi a m e over h into nu minus nu naught square. So what is nu naught? H nu naught is equal to phi, and this nu naught we know as threshold frequency. So this is the minimum frequency you need to have to take out one electron. This is what we have studied in our 11th, 12th standard photoelectric effect. So nu naught is called threshold frequency, and I have defined phi as h nu naught. So this is how I got the expression for current density from the previous expression. So h nu minus h nu naught, I take out h square and deleted with this h cube. So eventually h remained in the denominator. This 2 got cancelled out with this 4, and eventually all of us are left with this expression for J. And not to our surprise, J is not dependent on T. J is only dependent on nu. J is proportional to nu square actually. Nu minus nu naught square. J is proportional to nu square. So only if you increase the frequency further, the number of electrons will come out will be more. So in this case, you can have photoelectric emission at any temperature. That's what we assumed after Bhavya's question, that if the energy of photon is sufficient, it is greater than W itself, then you can have photoelectric emission at any temperature. Not at absolute zero, but greater than absolute zero. You can have photoelectric emission at any temperature. And it means because J is independent of temperature, you can have photoelectric emission at any temperature if you have sufficient energy of photon incident on the surface. That is what the physical part of it is. Isn't it wonderful? Because it was our assumption before starting the theory. Our assumption is correct. You can have photoelectric emission at any temperature. So yes, that's what the first approximation is. Yes. Now we are moving to another approximation, which tells that what if we have h nu very, very less than phi? It means that the photons. Yes, somebody raised hand. You can ask questions directly.
Sir, we have studied photoelectric effect in modern physics also. There we studied that if we increase the frequency of the photon, then number of electrons will not increase, but the kinetic energy of the electron after coming out of the metal will increase. So how
Yes.
is it?
So two things. First is this is an approximate calculations, and other is number of electrons will not increase, but if kinetic energy of the electrons will increase, it will contribute in current. Because what is current? Current is number of charge passing through a cross-sectional area per unit time. So if electrons has more kinetic energy, more number of electrons will pass per unit time. If we are talking about this, let me explain it. So this is a piece of metal and it's YZ plane. So some electrons will come out. So if we increase the frequency, electrons kinetic energy will increase. Initially it had this much kinetic energy, now it has this much kinetic energy. Now number of electrons is constant, but since they have larger kinetic energy, so through this cross-sectional area per unit time, there will be more number of electrons which will be passing. Right? You are getting my point? Because they have larger kinetic energy, so all the electrons will come out and there will be more number of electrons which will start to pass, because if they had this much kinetic energy, they will travel slowly and then there will be few number of electrons which will pass. But here there will be more number of electrons which will pass per unit time. So that's what contributes in this current density eventually. So that's how we get increased current density, because number of electrons passing per unit time increases because flux increases as we increase frequency. I hope you got the answer.
Sir, number of electrons depends on intensity, I guess, not frequency.
Number of electrons depends on intensity, definitely, but due to a fixed intensity, what you can do is, due to a fixed number of photons increases, collides with the surface, fixed number of electrons comes out of the surface per second. That keeps on happening.
Sir, you can probably do some math. I mean, just
Yeah.
go for the formula of current Q by T and all that, and probably you can.
Okay, yes. So what is current density? J equal to current upon unit area. And this is what do we mean by current? It is number of particles passing into their charge into A into T. So this is current density. Now we are not increasing this, but since the kinetic energy is increased, this number of electrons passing per unit area gets increased. So eventually we are not increasing how many number of, we are not controlling how many number of electrons are coming out from this surface. What we, that will be increased because we are increasing frequency, because they have larger kinetic energy. Now they will travel this distance in shorter time, so we will have larger current density. Still, yes. So we are not controlling how many number of electrons are coming out from this surface. What we are really controlling is their kinetic energy. Yes, you are absolutely correct. But because of their kinetic energy, they will move fast, and since they will move fast, there will be more number of electrons passing through this cross-sectional area per unit time, because they are moving fast. Initially there were somewhere around 25 electrons. Let's suppose there were 25 electrons which were able to pass through this surface. Now since they have larger velocity, so what we used to do, if we want to find out the number of electrons passing through this cross-sectional area, we used to find a cube of length Vx, and all the electrons in this cube will pass through this cross-sectional area per unit time, because it is their velocity. So per unit time they will travel this much distance. So to distance v, they in the cube of distance v, they will cross this unit cross-sectional area. But now v is increased, so number of electrons in this cube who will cross this cross-sectional area per unit time will also increase. I hope you are getting this, or I'll rephrase it in some other way.
Yes, sir,
Got it?
Yes, sir, I got it.
Okay, yes, thank you. Because this cube's volume is increased because of the kinetic energy. And this cube is nothing but that n into v we used to do in our initial calculations of electrical conductivity and everything. So all the electrons sitting on this plane initially would cross, but now all the electrons sitting on this plane are also able to cross. So there are more electrons in this portion which are going to be crossing the surface, and that's how n will increase, and that's how j will increase.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much for bringing this doubt, because it is a wonderful connection with modern physics that we are going to. I was not able to think about this thing. So thank you for bringing this doubt. So we are going to connect our known modern physics with this, and we have connected it wonderfully. So we can say that our approximated theory also works really well. in this approximated region at least. So let's take another approximation. Any question from this part will be welcomed, but let's take another approximation. And in this approximation, if h nu minus phi is h nu is very less than phi, it means h nu minus phi is very less than kt. So delta is eventually negative. Sorry, h nu is very less than phi. So what is delta? H nu, if h nu, the energy of the photon is very less than the work function. So let's draw the well again. This is the work function phi. This is going to be the Fermi energy level, and this is going to be the total depth. So if the energy of photon is very less than the work function, then what do we assume? Delta is beta times h nu minus phi. So h nu minus phi, delta, in this case delta is going to be negative. But what do we assume? If energy of the photon is very less, then there were two parameters. One was px square by 2m, one was h nu, which were giving us two different kinds of energy. This is because of the temperature, this is because of the photons. And since photons has very less energy, so the current density, the number of electrons coming out from the surface, will depend largely on temperature. So this case should be identical to what? Can anybody tell? This case should be identical to? In this case, current density should depend upon which factors?
Thermionic emission na જેવું છે.
Yes, it is identical to thermionic emission. Because this energy of the photon is not playing so much crucial role. If we increase the temperature, the electron's kinetic energy will increase, and eventually it will come out of this well because of its kinetic energy due to temperature, not because the energy of the photon. So the energy of the photon is very less than the work function. This case should be identical to thermionic emission. That is what our assumption is before even doing any math. So let's do some math and see if this assumption is correct or not. So delta is negative. If delta is negative, then e raised to delta is very less than 1, and if e raised to delta is very less than 1, then f2 of e raised to delta is nearly equal to e raised to delta. And since this is nearly equal to e raised to delta, then current density is 4 pi a m e over beta square h cube into e raised to delta, and delta is beta into h nu minus phi. What do you see here? That's how we get J is equal to 4 pi a m e over h cube k square t square e raised to beta into h nu minus phi. And this I'll write as 4 pi a m e over h cube k square I'll take it here, k square t square e raised to beta phi prime, where I've defined something called phi prime as h nu minus phi. How does this look? Is it a lookalike of something? Oh, phi minus h nu. Let's define phi minus h nu as phi prime. So it is minus of phi prime.
It is similar to Richardson-Dustman equation.
Yes. So this guy is similar to Richardson-Dustman equation. It is e raised to minus beta phi. It is exactly similar to Richardson-Dustman equation. The constant might be a little bit different because of this a little bit different, but what it really means is if the energy of photon is not that high, then the emission of electron is highly governed by temperature. So if h nu is not high enough, emission is governed by mainly by temperature. And this looks like a Richardson-Dustman equation where the work function is this. It is modified work function. So it does look like Richardson-Dustman equation with modified work function phi prime equal to phi minus h nu. So electron does have to get this is, if this is phi, then electrons can come out to this level, which is h nu. So electron from this level you have to remove electrons. It is not like this, from this level you have to remove electrons, but the work function significantly decreased by this we mean that the work function significantly decreased because there is another energy supplier called photon. And if you increase a little bit of temperature, you are eventually going to get more current density because you have some energy already, you have supplied some of the energy. So now what you can do is you can plot this with modified work function. You can change this h nu. You can take different wavelengths of lights or different frequencies of lights and check in the same Richardson-Deshman equation that how should this j look like for different values of h nu. So what you can do is you can extend your code and you can check at different h nu at different frequencies for different colors or different wavelengths of lights, different regimes of light. How should this j depend on phi prime? So you can do this kind of work, and what it eventually means is this is exactly kindly equal to Richardson-Deshman equation with improved work function. So now you have to supply a less temperature. If you can compare it with the original thermionic emission, you have to supply less temperature to increase to take out electrons from this. So this is how this modified Richardson-Deshman equation looks like, and in this regime, it indeed was identical to thermionic emission in this approximation 2. Okay, and now I am just taking this corollary of approximation 2. I'm just taking corollary of approximation 2 in the case where h nu is exactly equal to 5. H nu is exactly equal to 5. Then what will happen is delta is going to be 0. And if delta is going to be 0, f of e raised to delta, f2 of e raised to delta is going to be pi square by 12. And in this case, j is going to look like this: pi cube a m e k square kb square t square over h cube, 3h cube. Sorry, it is, since it is pi square by 12, it's going to be 3h cube. And at those instances, this j is going to be governed by temperature, but only by t square, not by this extra term, which was also contributing. Now it is going to be governed by only t square. So in these three approximations, we try to find out the value of current density. Actually, what you can do is I took this graph from Patheria. This is the last slide. I took this graph from the book by Patheria. And what you can do is you can plot j ln of j by t square in arbitrary units compared to this. There is h nu minus nu naught divided by kt. So compared to this beta, this is delta. Sorry. So compared to delta, if you are plotting this ln of j by t square, if you are solving those integrations numerically, you are going to get this solid line that there has been drawn. And for a single material, what they did is for different temperatures, they tried to put the experimental data of current density. For different temperatures, they tried to put the experimental data of current density, and they figure out eventually that this matches with the actual prediction that we did, exactly accurate. This is our prediction. This solid line is our prediction from this theory. If you solve that Fermi integral properly using some numerical codes, and these guys are the experimental data taken at different temperature. If you keep the metal at different temperatures and throw some light with different frequencies, you will see this relation, which is exactly matching with our prediction. So after this much mathematics and this much science, it is a clear thing.
So it seems like temperature is not doing anything.
Huh?
At different temperature, there is no
Yes.
change in the data points because all are lying on the same line.
But yes, but
What does this mean, sir?
yes. So at different temperatures, the current density, because here we have not only taken j, it is j by t square. So here also is the contribution from temperature. So what you can do is directly you can plot j versus this delta, and then you can figure out that at different temperatures j will be different. But since we took out temperature here also, that's why it is not giving any difference for different temperatures. Okay.
Okay.